Chris here. Just a quick look at our upcoming video where we're going to have 50 quick tips, methods, and techniques in watercolor. You're going to be so excited to work on these. Here, let's just take a quick look fast, and then we'll get right into the video. All right, welcome, Chris Petri here. Thanks for coming by. It's great to have you. We're going to have some fun. 50 quick tips, methods, and techniques in watercolor. You can't imagine how much fun it is to go through 50 of these. And you're going to see, we're going to work on these together. Grab your pencils, your pens, your watercolors, your brushes, your paper, and let's just start working on them one by one. And this is a great video you can come back to time and time again if you want to brush up on some of these, or maybe go through them a few times, especially if you're just starting out. If you're just starting out in watercolor, welcome. Thanks so much for coming by and with us, and I'm hoping you'll get a start with watercolor. And it's really a fun medium. You can bring it anywhere you want to go. Vacations, weekend trips. You can paint out in the backyard. You can paint in the house. Easy cleanup, no worries. Doesn't really make a mess of clothes or furniture or anything like that. Watercolors are just a great overall medium to work in. That's why I enjoy it so much. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just grab a Sharpie pen. Let me find my Sharpie pen here. Here it is. And we'll just start numbering them as we go. So maybe we'll start out here, and I'll just call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So those would be the first group of 6 will do. And let me see, I'm going to just start with my list over here on the side. First one on the list is going to be fan brush. Okay, so I don't use this all the time, but I do use it occasionally, and I think it makes, if you're just starting, if you're just brand new to watercolor, these fan brushes are really great if you want to make some trees and things. It really can speed up the process. So what we'll do is we'll just, what I basically have to my right is a water container with fresh, clean water to my right. And next to that, I usually have a sponge that I can just take my brush and tap off some of the water. So I maybe rinse off my brush. So something like this, I'll rinse off my brush, tap it on a sponge, or you could put some paper towels down or something, whatever you have. And this way you don't have a flooding, dripping with water brush when you go into your palette to mix up your colors. So essentially, if you can just imagine, my main idea with watercolor as far as my techniques go, for the most part, I'm usually always starting out working with a damp brush when I'm going in and getting my paints. If I need to add a little extra water to my paints in my palette, I'll go in and get a little extra water out of the water bucket and add it. But most of the times I'm always rinsing off my brush, drying off most of the water on a sponge like this, or even a tissue or a paper towel in my hand. Sometimes you'll see me, I'll usually keep a tissue or a paper towel in my hand and dry off the brush a little bit before I get my paints here. So that's just a thing that I do, you just for just to bring it up so you kind of understand like the way I'm really usually working most of the time. So again, I'll keep my bucket over here, my water bucket. I need the real estate over here. I don't want to show my water bucket because it'll take away from the paintings that we're going to do, these compositions. That's the only reason I have my water bucket over here on the right hand side. And so again, I rinsed off the brush here, dampened up this brush, fan brush. This is an old fan brush I've had for probably 20 years now. I think I got this with one of the Bob Ross sets, or I bought this when I was buying Bob Ross and William Alexander paint sets when I was younger, teenager. That's going back actually a lot longer than that, probably 30 years ago. So let's make some sap green, cobalt blue, a little bit of raw umber, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. And that'll be some of for our tree. Let's make some foliage with this. Let's look how good this works. So we can do this, and we can kind of flip up the brush like this. So you can just take this fan brush and kind of move it around, do some twirling, some spinning. Whenever we paint trees, usually we we try to keep some white paper here and there so that the tree looks like there's some natural, like trees do look. They usually have foliage here and there. Then you can darken up, maybe a little bit of burnt umber and some blue, French ultramarine blue, and then make a little bit of a shade part of the tree. So we'll pretend that the light is coming from up above like this across. And then we're going to have some of that shade underneath the tree. So this is some pretty basic ways you can use your fan brush. And you can even add some cadmium lemon yellow, make some lighter where the tops of the trees are here on this side. And you can do some couple dabs like that. Like this, and then some more of that dark down here, like that. And then, sure enough, we can just take our brush, just like it is, and we'll make a trunk of a tree here, like this. And you can kind of see how there's lots of pointy sprigs of brush hairs that you can actually start to create some branches and limbs. And then just a little bit of ground here just to make it feel like it's sitting on the ground. And a little bit of shade maybe over here. Maybe there's some shade over here. And that's good. That's our first kind of composition here, our technique, a method of making some trees really fun, and with just this really fun, interesting fan brush. This one happens to be Winton, Winsor & Newton, England fan brush. And mostly 90% of all my art supplies that I use, I do put in the comment section below. So if you're going to be watching the video, and then when you're finished with the video and you're deciding you're going to start to paint in watercolor, all my supplies and everything that I use on a constant basis are down below, and then you can shop around from there and see what you like. And I buy everything on Amazon for the most part. I have a Blix near my house. I go there often too. So that's the number one. Okay, number two, we'll do some shrubs. So let's make some shrubs. Maybe we'll use some cerulean blue here. Let's change up the colors a little bit. So we'll do some shrubs here. We'll just mix around a little bit. Okay. And again, just moving around and twisting around the brush, and now we're making more like a hedge here. Some shrubs, hedgerow. And as we do that, we'll get some more of that shade type color. So you can make some blue, maybe add a little bit of alizarin crimson, make it like a some violet color there underneath. And you can kind of rinse off the brush, maybe dry off a little bit of the water, just have a damp brush, and then maybe you just kind of tap and diffuse in that darker color we just made here, which is kind of like a violet. You could use violet already mixed right in the tube paint like that. And you put a little bit of water in there, and that gives you some nice shade feel underneath. And then maybe we go back and get some more of that green, and we just make a little, using just the one corner of the brush here, the fan brush, we make a bit of grass here on the bottom. And it's as simple as that. And then maybe we could take some brown, mix with some of this darker color here, and we'll make maybe there's some branches underneath here and the bottoms of the shrubs along there. And even if we wanted to kick it up a little more, kick it up a notch, we could take some of that light green that we made with the cadmium lemon yellow, and we could add a little of that sparkle of light on the tops there. And again, I'm just using the very tippy points of the fan brush like this, like that. And there we have some. You can take your tissue or paper towel, maybe lighten up a couple spots along the top. And that is our hedges or shrubs with the fan brush, and sticking with the same family of colors here. All right, now let's try for the number 3. Let's create some weeds. And we'll take some more of that green, mix it in with some of that brown. Let's see if we just take the brush and hold it straight up in the air like this, so that the brush is actually, like I'm just holding the brush straight up, and then I can just take the fan brush and set it down. If you need to steady your hand for some reason, you can always hold your hand above the paper a little bit like this if you want to steady your hand a little more. And then you can, or you can rest it on something. You can obviously maybe take a roll of tape or something. So you could always take a roll of tape and put it there and rest your hand on the roll of tape. And then you can just keep your line straight here for the weeds. So we do this. Look at that, how good that looks. And then a couple taps. Now what's great about this is you can make thousands of little bits of grass and weeds and things like this in a landscape painting, and it's almost like if you tried to paint each one of those with a smaller brush, one at a time, it would take you hours, and it would be kind of like, it wouldn't look good either, I don't think, if we tried to paint each one of these individually. But if you just use the fan brush like this, look at how good that looks. Lots of great effects with this brush. And then you can take the brush here and we can go in and get a little more green, maybe a little bit of that purple, ultramarine violet. Make a little bit of a bottom to this. Put a little bit of ground here and ground cover. You could tap on the brush like this too. You could add some color to it if you want to add a little more color. Maybe add some yellow ochre. Might look good. So we add a little yellow ochre to that. Make it look a little more like we have some color variation there. And then we could even add in some little bit of red, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna, like this. So yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna, like that. And again, we can take the brush and dry off a little bit of the water. Pick up some more of this. Maybe do a couple splashes. Just tap on your brush. So you just take the brush and kind of swing it down and tap it at the same time. Like that. And you can get some textures. Same thing over here. You can add some texture to your trees. Like this. You can even add some like that. So you can see the application of this brush is just really phenomenal. And then maybe some lighter lemony yellow over here. Kind of adds a little bit of feeling of some warmth and sunlight to it. Just a little bit. Like that. Maybe a little shadow color. A little bit of that purple again. We can use the ultramarine violet. Mix that in there, and then we could just have a little ultramarine violet. Maybe there's some shadows here from some of the weeds. Shadowing can be really good. Kind of adds another three-dimensional quality to your compositions here. So I'm just kind of adding to what we did basics. So I did the basics first, and then you can see I've added in some darker darks here for some shadow colors. You can add those in if you feel comfortable. If you just want to keep it more simple, you know, you don't have to put in all the shadowing to start with. But it's just fun getting used to using some different brushes. Not a lot of watercolor artists use a fan brush like this, I have to admit. But they do work great. I don't know why I don't use mine more, but I think I'm going to in the future because it does really work great, especially for like landscapes like this, or if you're going to do a city scene, like a street scene, and you want to have some trees and bushes or shrubs or flowers or anything like that in your city scenes, like a nice a city view or something. You know, you can use this to get in some of your trees and things like that. All right, so I'm going to take just a quick break. I'm going to maybe clean up the palette a little bit, and we'll come right back. We'll get started with 4, 5, and 6. And again, we're just going to keep moving through these. Hope you'll enjoy the fast pace of this. Hit the pause button here and there if you have to. Hope you'll subscribe on the down below in the video. You'll see a subscribe button. Feel free to subscribe. This way you stick close to us here and you keep up to date with our new videos coming out every week and on this channel. And okay, we'll just take a quick break for a second and be right back. All right, so we just took a quick break, and while I was away, I just was coming back and I took a Sharpie and I just put fan brush on each of these here below the composition that we did for each of these. And we'll keep going. And again, I'll label each one of these too as we go, just for notes for ourselves. So however you want to make notes on your paper. And I just wanted to, this is basically the, I'm using the Studio Watercolor paper by Fabriano. That's in the you know, it's very reasonably priced. You get a large pad of great watercolor paper. Some of the best watercolor paper out there. And this is just, I section it off halfway on one side and then thirds the other way. So I think the way I did measure was, let me take a quick look here. So halfway on the paper this way is 5.5 inches this way, 5.5 inches. Or the metric would be 14 centimeters. And that would be the halfway point all the way across. And then for the thirds coming across this way, each one of these boxes is 4.25 inches, approximately 4.25 inches, or centimeters, that would be about 11 centimeters for each of the boxes going this way. So 11 centimeters, 11 centimeters, 11 centimeters. Same thing over here. And of course, again, we said the halfway point was 14 centimeters this way, 14 centimeters this way, or in inches, that would be 5 and, I guess it's about 5.5, 5.25 to 5.5, and then here we have 5.5, so maybe 5.5, 5.5. Yeah, that's about what it is. 5.5 by 5.5, these two sides. And that's pretty much how we section this off. And I use some Sharpie just to make the lines. I use pencil hash marks first when I start out, so I get everything, just little hash marks for the measurements, and then I take the Sharpie marker and just line up the ruler, and then take the marker and go right across. We'll do a few as we go. All right, so we are going to continue on here. Let's start our next bit of compositions here. Our tips and methods and techniques in watercolor. 50, we're doing 50, so we're just getting started. All right, sea sponge. This is something sometimes I'll use this if I have a large painting and I want to do a lot of effects, like landscape paintings and things like that. This can be a great way to get some great texture into your paints. So what we'll do is we'll try out this sea sponge here. It's just a small piece. You can buy it in large online on Amazon. You just type in sea sponge and you can buy them in large pieces and then cut them down to smaller pieces like this, and you know, you can get some really nice effects. We'll work on that next. So let's mix up some more paint here. So I'll take a brush. Maybe I'll empty out my water bucket. Once your water gets kind of muddy, you just empty it out. I have a larger bucket across from me in my studio. I'll dump my water as I'm working into that, and then I'll empty it out at the end of the day or the end of the week in the slop sink in the basement. However you like to work, but it is good if you have things set up for yourself kind of easy, or if it's just more simple to just, you know, Change out your water whenever you can. So I'll take some fresh, clean water with my brush. I usually, again, I always use a tissue, check off some water or a sponge next to the water container. Then I come over here and we'll do some more greens. We're going to do a little more green, brown, burnt umber, and sap green. A little bit of yellow ochre. I'll stretch it out over here. Then maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue to darken it up a little bit, make it cooler for some shade areas with a little bit of that purple. That should be good. And then what we'll do is we'll try our sea sponge here. Maybe I'll dip that in water, dampen it up a little bit. So I'll take the whole sponge, dip it into my water container, and then squeeze out the excess water so that the sponge is now damp. And you could try using it dry or damp, it's up to you. And then we'll just take this and dip it into our paint that we just mixed. And we'll see what kind of effects we can get. Now this is really exciting. I hope you'll try these tips and tricks and methods and techniques out. Okay, and that's just dipping the sea sponge into the paint. You can get some of the darker paint, mix up a little more of the shadow color, maybe some of that blue and purple, and then dirty that up a little bit with maybe some burnt sienna. And then tap that in there again, and then we'll make some shade side over here. So again, maybe I'll just go straight into the paint. Try to get a little thicker paint here. So I'll dip right into see that I can get a little darker on this side of the foliage. Then maybe I can rinse off one more time, take my sponge, dip it in the water container, nothing fancy, just rinse it out, squeeze out the excess water. So now we have the sponge is now clean again. Then we can go in and get some of that light lemony yellow. I'll dip it right into there. And that's going to be the bright side of the tree, like that. Maybe a little bit over here too. Some of that brighter. So the light is coming from this way, and then this is this shade side over here. Then once we have that, we can certainly take our brush, quite a large brush. This is a number 12 Da Vinci travel brush, Kolinsky hair. This is the probably the most this is like the top quality brush with natural hair, and works great. Travel brush. We'll make some burnt umber and French ultramarine blue. And let's just see if we can get a tree trunk in here really loosely. So you can see I'm not really getting too fussy. I'm just going to do a tree trunk here. Okay, and then once this dries, we'll come back to it actually, you'll see. We're going to let this dry just a little bit. And once the foliage dries that we put onto the paper with our sponge, then we can go in and do a little more fine tuning with the branches and some twigs in there. Right now it's still wet, so that's going to wind up kind of flowing too much. So we want to let things dry and then we work on it and go back in there and work on it. So let's do that. Let this be for now. And we have just a little bit of the bottom of the composition. We just put a little bit of grass here. Okay, now we're going to number 5. Let's do some shrubs with our sponge, our sea sponge here. So I'm going to take green here, a little bit of brown, mix it in with that. Let's do another bit of shrubs here. Okay, so you can see it's very similar to what we did there. Then we can take our brush here. We'll get a little bit of that darker burnt umber, a little bit of the purple, a little bit of green. And a little bit of the shadow colors underneath, like that. And then some and then we can also dampen the brush, rinse it off, dampen the brush, and then come over here and get some of that lemony yellow. And again, we're using the same colors, so you can see up top here where the light is, the light's coming from here. I often you'll see me on a lot of my videos, and I'm hoping you'll start to come by and watch my videos and work along with us. We're all working together here on my channel, but I often will put a icon, which is a light icon, just to let us know where the light's coming from. So in all of these scenes, usually I'll always do this. So we can just put them in every scene that we do. We just remember where's the light coming from. Just like this. And that looks pretty good. Let's keep going here. And one more, maybe we'll take the sponge, we'll rinse it off good. What I'll do now at this point is I'll rinse off my sea sponge one more time really good. Then I'll take this water is very murky. You can kind of see how it's quite a bit muddy looking. Let's start off, empty it out. We'll start out with some fresh water because we're going to change our colors right now. So, and what I'll do is since we're going to change colors, I usually keep my palette pretty tidy. I just take some paper towel, dampen it with some water, and just take the palette and just dampen up, and just doesn't have to be perfect. One time quickly with like a damp tissue, and then one more time just mop up some of the water. And there you go, we have it. Okay, the next thing for textures, maybe I'll just draw a quick I think we'll just do this. I'm going to make a window, just a quick window like this. Basically a rectangle. I'll draw it kind of dark here so you can see it pretty good. Let's see, we're going to do a rectangle just like that, and then we'll put a windowsill like this underneath. Maybe that's a stone windowsill. Maybe we'll put a stone header across the top of the window, and I think I'll just leave it pretty plain, pretty simple like that. And then what we'll do next is we're going to make some stucco type of texture around the window. So we're going to pretend that this is like a stucco wall. So I'll dampen the brush up, and I'll get a little bit of the raw sienna, yellow ochre, maybe raw sienna, just a little bit. Some blue down here, cerulean blue, like this. Maybe with this, a little bit of alizarin crimson with the raw sienna, like that. Yellow ochre here. And then down here, a little bit of red with the blue, cerulean blue, like that. So now we have kind of a warm and a cool mixture of colors, very light, and we're going to make like a stone or stucco wall. So we'll take our sponge, sea sponge, and we'll dip it in just like this. Pick up that water. And just gently tap on the paper like that. Same thing, just go right into the blue with a little bit of the red. And we do that. Now, once we have that on there with our sea sponge, then we can take our brush with clean water and we can dampen up these areas like this. Like that. And if we dampen that up and then add more color to it, we have just dabbing it on there. That gives us a nice feeling of like some stone or stucco on this wall. And then what we'll do next is we'll let this dry for a few seconds. And then we'll come back over here. We said we wanted to do a little bit of branches back in number 4, which was our tree that we did with the sea sponge. Let's just do that over here quickly. Just a little bit of brown, burnt umber, and French ultramarine blue. And we're just going to do a couple branches. And you can kind of see how you can, once this dries, then you have like really a much better and easier time putting in some finer branches and things like that. You can kind of just put in a few here and there. I wouldn't do a lot. Sometimes less is more. But you can put in as many happy branches and things that you want. And I think that's good. I did that with a fine point. This is a Da Vinci travel brush. This very similar to this brush. This brush is natural hair. This brush is synthetic hair brush. So this is the number 5 Da Vinci travel brush, synthetic hair, which is kind of fun to work with. It doesn't hold as much water, which means you have a little more control on how much water is on your brush. And that's kind of better for beginners, the synthetic brushes. All right, so we kind of can see how we can go back in once this dries. This is all dry, and get some details in there. And now maybe we'll find a medium-sized brush. And this is a number 8. Same thing, this is a Da Vinci travel brush, number 8. For over here, and then what I'll do is I'll try to start putting in some of the glass and shadows on this part of the painting. And what I'll do is I'll just go in and some French ultramarine blue and burnt umber and burnt sienna. And try to see if I can get a good shadow under there like that. Okay, that looks good. I'm very careful and I go slow because this water is still, or the paper is still damp. You can kind of see that. So that's why over here we let this dry 100% because we were drawing very fine lines with our brush. Now we're doing more of some loose, but we can see that it is starting to infiltrate into the stone header that's over the top of the window. So that can be a problem. That's why I would let this dry maybe. So let's do that. Let's let this dry a little bit. I'll maybe try to lift this up. I just take some paper towel and I fold it like that and make a little crease along the paper towel. And then I come over here like this and I just lift up that little bit of paint that kind of infiltrated up into the top of that stone there. And that's fine now. Now it's working pretty good. And I think that's pretty... All right, I think we can keep maybe... usually the windows are going to pick up the the sky color, so that would be kind of cerulean blue, let's say. So I'll start to make the panes of the window. So I'm going to paint the panes of the window like this, about halfway down. So this is about halfway, maybe a little bit more we have to. And then we'll do that there. That's the other pane over here, the underside there. That's another shadow area. But we're just doing this loosely. And then sometimes it's going to pick up the window panes of the glass of the windows is going to pick up the foliage. I'll use some Viridian green there too. Maybe some yellow. Okay, so I put that in there. I will put some of this color in the stucco too. Maybe blot up a little bit. And those are the window panes like that. And another shadow under here. Just a little bit of shadow. And again, we could lift up a little bit of that paint. And we can also use some white paint, titanium white. We'll show you how, we'll go over another real fun technique of tip of using some titanium white in a tube, just a small tube like this of titanium white, and we'll show you how you can make some corrections once your painting has dried. We'll go over that next, once this dries for us over here. But I think that's pretty good. That's looking fine. It's a little bit darker under here, like that. Okay, so I think we're going to be best off if we let this dry now. Let that set up and dry a little bit. Maybe a couple splashes like this before we take our break. Gives us a little more feeling of the stone. If a splash doesn't come out the way you like it, you just lift it up quickly right away with a paper towel or tissue. And that's all. Okay, so we'll come right back in a few seconds. We're just going to let this dry, and incidentally, if you want to, you can always have a blow dryer next to your table when you're working with your paints, your watercolors, and you can dry off a section like this or a composition like this more quickly. I'm going to actually use the blow dryer, but I do want to take just a quick break. So always remember that. A blow dryer is really, most like watercolor artists that are advanced watercolor artists, they'll usually always have blow dryers with them at their workstations, their tables, and at home in their studios, and even outdoors. Sometimes people will bring battery-operated blow dryers so that they can have something outdoors too if they're going to do some plein air painting. So, all right, we're going to come right back and finish up this composition, and I think that's going to be it for now. You can always go back and do a couple splashes here and there. Okay, just doing some fun splashing with my brushes. I like to practice that a lot, so since we're doing practice compositions, why not just do some splashes here and there? Okay, we'll be right back. All right, so let's continue on here. We did let this dry a little bit. I had a lunch break So I'm actually I'm not gonna need anything like the blow dryer right now. I can just kind of use the natural drying process after about an hour having lunch. It's fine, it's dry to the touch. And we talked about using a little bit of titanium white. So I have some Holbein tube paint here. And I'll take the tube paint and then take just a touch with my smaller brush here, the number 5. Put a little bit of yellow ochre in the top, just to warm up that white, because it's pretty much a really like stark white with not much tint in it at all. So if you add a little bit of yellow ochre to it, it just makes it a little bit warmer, the white. And then what I'll do is I'll just use it here for this pane of the window. So you can always add a couple lights back into your painting. And then over here maybe I'll put a touch of it there. Like that, so you can always add in a little bit. You can also take some, what I would do now is I would set this down. I would actually change out my water again and put some fresh clean water again into my water bucket, my water pail. And we could do a little bit of fresh clean water. So right now I'm going to clean this up a little bit. One more time like this. A little bit of water, fresh clean water. And then take some of the titanium white with that little tiny bit of yellow ochre in there and make a little bit of white wash like this. Mix it good. And then you can do a little bit of some splashing technique. So if you splash a little bit of that white onto your paper, that gives it that stone and stucco kind of feel, plaster kind of feel. You can also add it into some trees. You can always splash in a little bit of titanium white into your trees. Gives it a little bit of a sparkle. Just a couple spots, just here and there. A little bit of texture goes a long way. But I do it very sparingly. I might take some more. I rinse off my brush, dry off my brush on a paper towel or tissue, and then I take a little bit of that titanium white. And maybe we can make a couple little bits of light coming across this window. Maybe the light's catching the glass of the window. So maybe we do this, a couple of these. Like that. And that's good. All right, so we're going to move on to our next half a dozen compositions coming up. And we're just going to keep going until we hit that 50 mark. We're going to do 50 tips and methods and techniques in watercolor for you. We're going to have a great time doing it. Take your time, break the video up as much as you want. You know, you can work on maybe 10 at a time. Break it up into like 10 days if you want to, or just go through the whole thing one time, watch it all the way through this video, and then come back and pick some, maybe write down some of the numbers, that because we're going to number everything 1 through 50. So you might, your favorite ones you might write down first. Maybe these aren't your favorite things to paint. Maybe you like water, you know, boats, oceans, things like that. We're going to cover more. We're going to cover everything that you really enjoy with watercolor, whatever your favorite scenery is and your favorite subject matter. We're going to cover it all here. By the time we get to the 50 number of our compositions, we're going to have a lot of different subject matter covered. So this is just starting out. We have a lot more to go. You might want to jot down your favorite numbers. You might say, I like number 1, and I like number 6, and then I like number 20 and number 35. So you can kind of you know, pick and choose which ones you want to work on first, you know what I mean? So you don't have to actually do every one as you go, one by one, when you're working on these compositions. Pick and choose which ones you like or more, you know, are most interesting to you to start with, and that's what you would do. You would just pick the ones you like the most, maybe work on those, maybe do those 2 or 3 times, each of them 2 or 3 times till you get the hang of it, kind of get the feel of it, get it looking the way you want. That's the only thing you have to worry about when you're painting as a watercolor artist. Just remember, you're the artist. You paint it until you're comfortable with the way it looks. And if you like the way it looks, so if you paint it once or twice and it looks good, that's fine. Then you can work on another composition on one of these. Maybe you'd have to paint it only once and it looks good, and that's fine. And you move on to the next one. So you kind of paint them the way you'll be happy with it. You know, you want to be happy with your compositions as you go. So if you have to do it 3, 4 times to get it to look good, well, then that's fine. You do it that way. You're the artist. You have to decide. Or you might just want to really do it as a fun exercise as you go through, and you just do each one at a time. It's all up to you. And then you can come back around again and do more of them as you like, you know, additional times, you know, practicing up on some of the ones that are your favorites. But in any case, let's get going. Let's get the next 6 going here. Might as well, let's just do it right now. We'll just take off our tape here. We'll set these aside right now. Okay, and then we'll bring our next sheet of paper in. Like this, and then peel off some of this here. So there's some of that there. And like I was mentioning before, we are using the Fabriano Studio watercolor paper. And this comes in a really thick pad. You can see how thick this pad of paper is. There's 50 sheets of paper in here. This is a great bargain, and it's great paper. It's really, this is, you know, if you're just starting out, if you want the best absolute paper that you can have that's at a really fair price, this is the paper to get. There's other papers that are, you know, a little bit less expensive. Do use those if you want to kind of, if you're on a budget and you want to make sure you're not spending too much. That's fine too. But this paper is like professional grade paper, even though they call it studio watercolor. This is professional grade paper, so it's a great bargain if you are going to buy this. 50 sheets, you know, a lot of paper. And again, this is high quality. Fabriano is probably, you know, known around the world as one of the best it's probably the best watercolor paper out there in the world right now. Either that or Arches, I guess. Those are probably the two that I think most people, watercolor artists, the top pros, do use. So, and you know, you can kind of see here that it's got 50 sheets. And 11 by 14 size. Incredible paper. Okay, sometimes I don't worry about it. If you're getting started as a watercolor artist, you're going to get smudges of paint here and there. You're going to lean your hand into the palettes. So right now I lean my hand into the palette somehow, and I got paint on my hands, and it's starting to smudge around my table here. That's when I just take a quick break and start finding out where my paint smudges went, and I look around and try to mop them up a little bit with a paper towel or a tissue. This way I don't keep, there's some here on the side of the palette that, okay, there we go. Watercolor's messy, so don't worry about it. If you get smudges and things on your paintings or compositions, don't worry about it. You just keep working on it, keep going. Smudges actually look good sometimes in a painting. All right, so we'll just do this. We'll put this on the camera just like so. I'll take a little bit of artist tape, and then I just trim off 2 pieces. One for the top, one for the bottom. So I think a really good thing to remember if you're just starting out in watercolor is you want to keep your paper really stable. You don't want to have it sliding around at all. So you always want to have it taped down or secure in some fashion when you're working. So just a good fundamental thing with watercolors, or any type of painting too, if you're painting in oils or acrylics or anything like that. So this way the paper is completely stable, and let's see, now we're going to simply line up our hash marks. We made those hash marks around the paper at those intervals that we talked about before earlier in the video. You have to maybe go back and check that if you missed that, but I just line up the hash marks, the ruler up here, and then I find the hash mark down here, set it down, and then over here, halfway up from the bottom, up, and we go across like this. There we go. That's our sections here, and then we're going to start out here, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so we're ready for our next 6 compositions, our tips and methods and techniques in watercolor. They're quick tips and techniques that you can employ into your paintings whenever you're painting whatever subject matter you like to paint the most. Flowers, landscapes, seascapes, boat paintings, flowers, portrait painting, figure painting, whatever it is. You can use some of these compositions to help you to work out and hash through some of your paintings. Just some ideas to work on, having fun. So I'm going to just do my checklist here. So I have a checklist of all the tips and tricks and techniques in watercolor. I have it all listed out here, so I'm just checking them off one at a time. So we've already gone through the first 6. There we go. Okay, number 7, liquid frisket. All right, liquid frisket. This, I don't really use it often. Probably only, I would say, possibly on some maybe paintings that I might be, someone hires me to do a painting and I have to use it to help me make a better painting somehow. But I've used this in the past. I still will use it in the future. Once in a while, I still use it here and there on paintings. Basically, the liquid frisket is you put it onto the paper, it dries, and then you can paint over the top of it, and it'll keep the paper underneath it pure white. And then when you're done painting your painting, you can wipe off the liquid frisket. It peels right off. It's like a very, very soft, rubbery plastic. You'll see how it works in just a second. And then you can actually preserve the whites of your paper if you want to. So we could do, let's see, let's try this out. So what we could do is I'm going to find a scrap piece of paper. Okay, so we're going to use this. And I have a scrap piece of paper here. I'll take that scrap piece of paper and squirt out some liquid frisket, and there we go. It kind of went out kind of quick here, so I'll just mop this up fast. This kind of happens once in a while when I'm working with art supplies. I think something is going to be I thought that was going to actually... Okay, no worries. So I would use a larger piece of paper, like, than this. I tried to kind of make do with a smaller piece of paper, but you can take your liquid frisket just like this, and you can kind of smooth it out, make it a little smooth, and then you can take it and put it onto your paper like this. What I'm thinking is maybe I'm going to do some I'm thinking of like some landscape type things with some flowers. just going to put a couple dollops here and there using the liquid frisket. And then what we do is we let this dry. It dries fast. This liquid frisket definitely dries quick. Couple little dabs here and there. 2 very, very tiny dabs. It's hard to see, I know. It's hard to see with the lighting on my camera here. But if you can see it's kind of thick and liquidy. You put it on and you paint in shapes. So what I did is I painted in shapes of some like grasses and weeds, and then also some flowers, some dabs of like flower shapes here and there in this area of the paper on this number 7 here. And then what I'll do is I'll set this aside. Okay. And we're going to let that dry. And again, liquid frisket probably dries in about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So what we can do is we can move ahead. And in the number 8 slot here, we are going to use our liquid frisket for some architectural style compositions here next. So what I'll do is I'll go back in and get some more scrap paper. So I trim a little bit of scrap paper like this, and I'll put out a little more liquid frisket. This time I'm going to be a little more careful. There seems to be a little bit of water in this. I probably should have stirred this maybe. So that's another thing too. Maybe with the liquid frisket, sometimes it comes in different brands. I like Liquitex. I've used this before. It's really good. But yeah, sometimes it might come out. There might be some excess like liquid in there, like more watery liquid in this. So what I'll do is I'll just let that flow out. And I just try to see if I can. And it seems like it is quite watery actually. So I'm just going to set it on this here on the paper, as you can see, and I'm just going to let it actually set up a little bit and get a little bit firm. And I'm shaking up the bottle. Maybe it's going to, but this will set up and become a little more firm, and then we can put it onto the paper. Matter of fact, let's just start putting it on the paper now. I'm going to take this and I'm going to paint like a building shape. So I'm going to actually here paint some rectangular shapes with my liquid frisket. And I'm going to make like a city type scene here, a cityscape. So I'm going to make some building shapes here. I take the brush and just go into more of the liquid frisket here just to get some more shapes going. And I'm making these all rectangular shapes except for this. There's going to be like a spire up here on this one building. And I'll go right over to the edge over here and I'll make a straight line going across like this here. And this will just show you some of the effects you can some of the effects that you can put into your paintings. Okay, so that there is good. And maybe we'll do one more. Let's see. This here, let's do some like a seascape, ocean waves, splashes. I'll take the splashes like this. And I'll take my brush and splash, like tap on my brush and splash upwards. That's going to be the ocean spray flying up off a few waves. So we're going to create some And then maybe we'll add some parallel lines like this across. That's going to be some of our ocean waves. And then I'll add some more crashing feeling of lifting, kind of pushing the brush up like this with the liquid frisket. Get in there, get some more liquid frisket on your brush, flip it up like this and get some wave action in there. Some spray and some foam and some waves like that. And I think that should be good. So we're going to let this set up for a few minutes. I'll take just a quick break, and I'm hoping you're enjoying this so far. Right now it's kind of hard to see. I've been putting on liquid frisket, which is a really like rubbery, soft rubbery liquid applied medium that you put onto your paper. And what happens is it sticks to the paper and you can paint over it with your watercolor, and then it will preserve the white paper underneath it where you've placed it onto your paper. And then once your watercolor dries, let's say you're making some sky washes, some ocean, some sky, some background colors, whatever you're painting over the top of your liquid frisket, it's fine. You can paint right over the top of it. And then once your watercolor paint dries, and we're going to show you how this works in just a second, then you take once it dries 100%, and you can use a blow dryer. Once it all dries, then you can just wipe the liquid frisket up with your hand, and you'll see that it preserves all the whites of the paper. And then you can do other things, work in other washes over the top of the white paper that you've preserved as you're working. So it's basically preserving your white paper by applying this liquid rubbery liquid frisket. And a lot of artists use it, especially professional artists. I know I've seen a lot of professional artists use this over the years in books and videos on YouTube and so forth. So we're going to try it out here. These three next compositions, we're going to delve into how liquid frisket works. You've just seen the first part of it. You're putting on shapes, whether it's flower shapes, little dollops of flower shapes with some weeds, some long shapes with your liquid frisket, or you're taking a large amount of liquid frisket and painting in a whole city scene, a whole bunch of buildings all at one shot. Or if you're going to do some ocean, some seascape type things with the ocean water, ocean spray, speckling on the liquid frisket on top with your brush, putting some waves in there, some crashing waves coming in, a little bit of, mixing it up here with our seascape style composition. So we're going to come back in just a second. I'm going to let this dry. Once it's dry, we can come back and paint over this, and then you'll see how this all works. It's a really fun thing to use. Great to learn about it, great to use it, great to practice some compositions with the liquid frisket. And then eventually, maybe it's only 6 months or a year or 2 years from now or 5 years from now, you might have a painting you're working on, and you might say, this stuff probably would work great for this painting that you're doing. And then you'll break it out. It's great. It stays a long time. You just make sure it's closed, the cap on the liquid frisket masking fluid. It's called masking fluid. I guess that's the technical name for it. Masking fluid. Liquid frisket might be the actual brand name of some of the brands out there, whatever. This is Liquitex masking fluid, as they call it. But you'll see how this works in just a second as we go further down the road here on this bit of technique and method in watercolor. Okay, be right back. Okay, we're getting back started here. Let's just mention this. When you use liquid frisket, I just wanted to mention this, it does gum up your watercolor brushes. So what we do is when we use liquid frisket or masking fluid, as they call it, you just have to dip your brush in some brush cleaner. You could use Ivory soap or any kind of like really good pure soap. I happen to use this here. This is brush cleaner and preserver. It's called BJ, original B&J. You'll find this on YouTube or Amazon, or any art store has this. It's basically like a brush soap. It's good to have this just to clean your brushes once in a while, and it also cleans really the liquid frisket off really well. So you just take a small dish or anything you have, a little container, tray, dish, whatever, plate, and you just use this soap, and you just get some soap on your brush and just kind of work it into the brush. And then you might have to go in there and just kind of peel a little bit of the little bits of the liquid frisket out of your brush. But if you use this brush cleaner or any kind of pure soap like Ivory soap, something like that, you'll find that you'll be able to take off most of that liquid frisket and get your brush back to 100% normal. But I would use a liquid frisket with a brush that's not one of your favorites. So you might want to take some of your brushes that are maybe like, brushes that you've had for a long time that are maybe kind of like worn out or something. Or, you wouldn't want to use your best and favorite brushes to put your liquid frisket on. You'd want to use maybe some of the older brushes that you have. Or if you're just starting out in watercolor, well, you might buy some really, really inexpensive brushes, like a package of maybe 6 or 8 watercolor brushes that are very, very inexpensive, and then you can use them for a project like this where you're going to use some liquid frisket, some masking fluid, as we call it. Okay, so there we go. I've kind of got everything off the brush hairs like that, just using the soap. And I use my water container, clean off my brush, rinse it off good. And that's fine. The brush is pretty much back to normal almost. And then I'll set that aside. And what I'll do is I always have these on hand too. These are the moist towelettes you can buy. These are great if you're a watercolor artist. You're going to want to have like those little containers of hand wipes. Hand wipes are great. Baby wipes or hand wipes. Whenever you get some schmutz on there, some watercolor paint, whatever it is, you can just wipe off your hands really quick and easy. You open up the container, pull out one of these wipes, get your hands wiped clean, good, and then you're ready to go again. So just good to kind of have these little bit of tidbits of information as you go. And so we'll put our soap and our dish over here to the side, and then we're going to continue on. So now we have said that we've put the liquid frisket on. It's dried. It's been about 20 minutes already, and I used the blow dryer too a little bit to kind of dry off these 3 sections here, 7, 8, and 9 with our liquid frisket. And now the fun begins. We're actually going to have a real enjoyable time just putting on some washes, and we'll see what happens. So we're going to take our water container, empty out that water because we did clean the brush with the soap and everything. So now we want to start out with a fresh clean bit of water in our container now. So I'll use some bottled water, fill up my container, and we're off to the races. So we'll use a larger brush like this. This is the number 12 Da Vinci travel brush. Okay. We have check off a little bit of water on my tissue, or you can use a sponge next to your water container. Check off a little bit of water. So you rinse your brush, tap on your paper towel, your tissue a little bit, take some of the water off, and then we're going to come over here. Now I did notice I do have some of that white left over, that titanium white that we used a little while ago. Let's make sure we make our palette, let's keep our palette clean. I wouldn't want to have that white so much in there. That could foul us up a little bit on this particular section here. Okay, now this is going to be more or less some flowers in a garden. So we're going to call this sort of like a garden flower type composition. We're going to go in, we're going to get our green. We'll get our lemony yellow there, our green here, sap green. So we have cadmium yellow lemon here. We have sap green here. Then maybe over here we'll put a little bit of cerulean blue. And then maybe over here we'll mix in a little bit of the purple, like that. And then maybe even we'll go in for some alizarin crimson over here. And some cadmium red too. Let's mix up a couple different reds there. Let's make this colorful. Let's add a little bit of cadmium yellow. That's kind of like a really warm yellow, like our orangey yellow. All right, so we have lots of great colors working for us here. Let's start out maybe a little bit of blue, cerulean blue up here. That might be where the sky is. Get a little bit of cerulean blue on your paper, and then just let that start up there, like so. Okay. Then we'll pick up some of the green here. some more blue. So I've rinsed off my brush, checked off a little bit of water so there's not too much water on there. And I'll work some of that blue right down on through the rest of the painting. Since we have blue in the sky, let's work that blue right down into the foreground and right here into the grass areas, the ground areas. Then we're going to work in our warmer colors. Maybe let's do some lemony yellow up here first. Just here and there. Straight into the lemon yellow. Okay. Then let's go in for some reds and start to get in some warmer colors here and there. Then some gray colors here on the sides. And that is it. You just really, all you're doing is covering your paper with wash. And the liquid frisket's going to do some really fun, exciting things. So we're just going to cover over like this, paint over the whole scene. Like that. You could also blot up with some tissue or paper towel here and there to develop a little more like some light effects where you have some misty kind of light effects like that here and there, not everywhere. Then you could also go in with some darker green, burnt sienna with some sap green. You could put that toward the bottom with a little bit of purple. That might be for the shadow areas of this composition. Couple of splashes. And if the splashes go anywhere else, no problem, just blot them up. Sometimes you have to get a fresh paper towel or tissue when you're blotting up some. I guess I'm using a very large brush and splashing with a very large brush. That means there's a lot of splashing going everywhere. You could actually use a smaller brush like this to do splashing. A little bit more difficult because you don't have as much water in the brush, but you have to practice splashing on your own on like a piece of scrap paper a little bit for a while until you get the hang of it. But it's you could see the different effects you can get. A larger brush, you get a lot more splashing, a lot of big splashing. The smaller your brush is, you get more finer, smaller speckles of splashing with those. A little safer to do it that way. But we are really coming along nicely here. So now we are going to just move right along to the next composition. We'll let this one dry and set up. And this next one, let's make this kind of like a maybe a sunset type of scene. Let's go with some red and orange, some yellow ochre. And let's just start up here. Get some yellow ochre up here in the sky. This is a building, a street scene, this next scene here. So we're starting out with some, maybe some purple up top here. So we'll start out with some orangey reds and purple up top, especially up top. That's where the darkest part of the sky is, like that. And then we take our paintbrush, rinse it off, dry off some of the water, and just let that wash mingle and mix together. Like this. Maybe we're going to let the sky have some clouds in there, some white clouds. This is maybe sunset, or it could be dawning in the morning. And we get some more of that orangey yellow. like that. Paint right over your buildings here. That liquid frisket's underneath here. Remember that. That's what we're doing. It's already dried. That liquid frisket, we have to let it dry half an hour and then even use a blow dryer. Make sure it's really, really thoroughly dry, the masking fluid. And then once you have that on there, then you just paint right over the top of it. And it won't, none of the watercolor is going to go through the paper and affect the underlying paper, which is going to stay white. So you can imagine anywhere you put that liquid masking fluid and you let it dry on the paper, then it seals the paper so that no water can get into your paper there. And then you can just continue to work here. So I'm just going to pretend this is some water here in the foreground. And then put some more golden colors here. Okay, that looks good. Then we're going to do this ocean. Again, I'll make sure I'm practicing good techniques and good habits. So I'm going to empty my murky looking water. You can see that's pretty muddy looking, that water there. Let's empty that out. I dump it into a larger bucket next to my art table here, my video making table. I'll have to run across the studio and get some bottled water. Okay. Okay, so I have fresh water now. And this is going to be ocean. Let's do some sky. I'll just use some of that wash right up there, sky. Sometimes if you go fast with watercolor, you'll notice that it really does look good. Just kind of really going with a quick pace, like this. Mixing in a little bit of the red and orange to tone down that blue a little bit. Sometimes tube colors straight out of the tube can be a little intense, so you want to, sometimes you'll notice it looks a little better if you can kind of tone down some of the color a little bit. Okay, this is the ocean now, here. So ocean, I like to use French ultramarine blue and sap green. That might be the horizon line in the distance of the ocean. Like that. Some splashing. And again, maybe I'll go in with a smaller brush to get some of the splashing in. Add some water to that. A little more French ultramarine blue. Sap green, a little bit of orange and red to tone that down a little bit. Some splashes like this up here. More controlled splashing with a smaller brush. If I use this, it's going to start splashing all over the place. So if you have a really big painting you're working on, you can use a large brush like this to splash. But if you're working on compositions like this, you want to use smaller brushes for splashing anyway. And there we go. All right, so now the next thing is we have to take another break. Yes. Take lots of breaks as you work. Don't get too fatigued and wind up, struggling with things and overthinking things too much. I'm just going to do some additional just straight tube paint right out of the palette like this across here. And you'll notice that watercolors look really good if you can use all of your tonal value ranges. So you want to have some really light lights here. You want to have some white paper. And you want to have some really good darks. If you can always remember that, that's a really huge key to having successful looking paintings, is making sure you can try to use all the tonal value. Does that make sense? Use all the tonal value ranges you can, just like in nature. When you see things in nature, there's dark things, there's light things. We want to have that same idea when we're painting our watercolors. I think you'll really have a fun time at painting watercolors if you're sort of using all your tonal value ranges, and it kind of gives you a lot of excitement in the painting. Okay, so now what we do is we let all of these washes dry. You can try these one at a time. I'm going kind of quickly here. We have 50. We have 50 more. Well, no, we don't have 50 more. Well, we have about maybe 40 more to go. I can't believe it. We have 40 more compositions to go. Tips, methods and techniques and tricks in watercolor. And I'm hoping you're going to stick with me here. Let's just keep working on each one of these one at a time. But I am going kind of quickly here, working multiple compositions at a time, just so that we can kind of save time and I don't spend too much, time on one individual composition, because it is a lot to do. Maybe we'll split this video into two, a part one and a part two. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. So look for part two to come out once we get to about 25. We'll call it quits there, and then we'll make another 25. But I have them all planned out, ready to go. So we will keep motoring on here. But we have to let this dry 100% before we peel off all that liquid frisket, and you're going to see how that really is fun and interesting as we work on using masking fluid in our watercolors. Okay, so we'll be back in just a second or two, and at that time we'll use a blow dryer and dry off all of the paint right now, these washes, and then we can peel off the liquid masking fluid. Okay, so good work, everybody. Good work, everybody. So far, we're doing a great job, are we not? And now we're going to start removing the liquid frisket. Now, when you remove this liquid masking fluid, they do make little they're like little rubberized removers for the liquid frisket. But I suggest that you just use your finger, because this way you can kind of feel around your watercolor paper and make sure you're getting it all up. Sometimes in the past when I've used liquid masking fluid and I've used those little masks, you could get them, purchase them. They're fine. They work really good. But I just tend to use my hand to remove the masking fluid, because this way I can feel the paper and I know all of it's up. Not that it's a great problem if there's a couple little bits left on it, but you can kind of see now that I've see. Now I know it's all off the paper. Perfect. Let's come right over here. Do the same thing. We just use our hands. You can use, again, they do sell the little frisket remover. It looks like a little eraser, basically. You can use that too. And can you see how good that looks? That gives you back your white paper. So if this, and I know a lot of artists, professional watercolor artists, will use liquid frisket if there's parts of their painting where they know they want to save the white paper, but it might be hard to do it, to paint around something. So if you have a hard time painting around something in a painting you're going to do, that's really a good time to use liquid frisket if you want to make sure you don't paint over something. So you preserve the white of the paper. And then you'll see we're going to go back and put washes over the top of this white paper. And then the same thing here. These are the waves crashing in, the water. And I just keep checking to make sure I have pretty much everything lifted up off the paper, the liquid applied masking fluid. And I think that's good. So I'll just take this and I'll just remove this from my art table here. I have a little waste, a little small bucket underneath my table that I use. I just put all my crumbs and all that kind of stuff in the bucket. All right, so now what we'll do is we will use some of our smaller brushes here and get some of the fine details in here for these flowers. So the first thing I would do, let's start off with a fresh clean palette. So I just take a paper towel again, paper towel and just dampen up all the sections of the palette here like this, and then that's all. Doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as we get most of the paint off there. And then we're just going to go back, and we remember when we were making these colors, it was sap green. So sap green, yellow, cadmium yellow, lemon, that nice cool lemony yellow. We also used some French ultramarine blue and purple over here, like that. Sap green. Then we also had some burnt umber, like this, with some sap green. And then we used some other color. But let's start off with this. And now we're just going to see, I'm going to repeat the same pattern that we used with our liquid frisket. And all that did was preserve some whites for us. And you can paint over that white paper now anywhere you want. You can add in some color, some cerulean blue down here maybe, for some cooler shadows, some purple. So you have some fun with this. And maybe some more blue and purple. Make it even a little darker, add some burnt umber to that. So maybe you have some really dark shadows down here. Again, let's use the darks and lights, all of the brightest bright whites of the paper, as well as the darkest dark shadows that you can get, to use all of your tonal value ranges that you can. That's really going to give your painting a really good look. Okay, so now I rinse off my brush. I have my tissues on hand. Maybe I'll move up to a larger brush if I can here. Rinse that off, dry off a little bit of the water, and now we'll start maybe getting in some colorful flowers. So we'll do some cadmium red, some alizarin crimson. There we go. And then we just add some let's add some of that alizarin crimson here and there, everywhere. Okay, so you just want to add some of that alizarin crimson here and there, everywhere. Okay, that's good. Now we go to the next color, cadmium red. Damp brush, dry off some of the water when you rinse your brush off, and then you pick up a little bit of this. Same idea. Add some of that cadmium red here and there, everywhere. It's your painting. You're going to have fun and create it the way you want it to, but you're just remembering that as you're adding color into your painting, you want to add it everywhere. Just little bits of it, even tiny bits of it, will harmonize your entire painting. Okay, and then I'm really liking this a lot. The two different reds, the cadmium and the alizarin crimson, that really looks good. Maybe we could use a little bit of that lemony yellow, like that. Here and there, everywhere. So if I put it up here, I want to put it here too, and there. Then maybe some splashes. Just a little bit of splashing, tiny bit. Then we will take a needlepoint brush. We'll use our needlepoint brush here and just rinse off the brush in some fresh water to get the brush damp with some water. And then we'll come in and we'll just do some burnt umber, sap green, burnt umber, burnt sienna, a little bit of blue, French ultramarine blue, a little bit of more green. I think a little more green to that would look good. And then we just twirl the brush around, get a nice good bit of paint on there, maybe dry off a tiny bit of paint on a paper towel. And this way we just don't add too much. And then a couple of these small details like this, just flick them on. Don't take too much time with this. That'll actually cause a problem. Just kind of go quick. A couple of quick bits of and that's good. And there we can see how we've got a lot of darks, a lot of lights, maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue into that mix there, like so. And just add a couple of darks in there. Kind of mysterious darks in there. Like that. A few down here. And that is good. Okay, now we're going to work on our second, number 8. Now I think what we're doing is we're noticing that this is a sunset behind this building. So this building's actually going to be, we could even think of it as the sunlight's behind us shining this way. So we left a lot of light on this building. Let's pretend that we're seeing this building lit up by the sun behind us. I have a couple of square brushes here we can use. Some flat brushes for windows. And let's just keep this simple. Let's just kind of start putting in some windows. Then we can tap on some water. A little bit of just clean water. And blot up a few times. I'll just use some red in that yellow just to make some, like that. So what I'm going to try to do now is just make some architectural shapes like this. Across here. So now you're seeing that I'm just actually trying to have an idea of some architectural shadows and darks within this composition. I'm hoping you're having fun with this. I don't want to really get too much detail in this. Just want to get some of the... And what we can do is we can let this dry too. But you can see how you can actually get some really good effects by sort of just by quickly getting in some features that you might think are going to look good with the architecture. Then maybe some more windows here. Maybe we're going to have a larger, maybe an arched doorway here. A little bit of shadow under there, like so. And that could be some water here. So that could be some balusters and walkways along the water. And this is the water down here. We'll just leave that be as it is. Maybe a little more dark, burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Okay, so we want to get some of those darks like we talked about. Try to get lots of darks, or actually try to get a few little spots of darks here and there. And then most of the painting is going to be the medium tones. Okay, we'll let that dry. As we keep working, we're going to again work as we go across all these three. Here, blue, French ultramarine blue, green, okay, feeling of water. Some cerulean blue, like this. Lots of water. Splash on here. Some viridian green. If I add viridian green here, I definitely want to add some up here and there. Okay, and that's the splashing of the waves. A little bit of raw sienna. A little bit of raw sienna for some warmth in this. Even a little bit of red, maybe some alizarin crimson in the painting. And there we go. We have some waves crashing in, splashing. Blot up a little bit here. Looks good. All right, so you can kind of see how liquid frisket can really give you an advantage by saving some of your white paper so that you can go back in and get some darks in there. All right. All right, so now the only thing I think I would do here is I would rinse off my brush, get a little bit of that raw sienna over here, and maybe do a little bit of some shadowing or just a little bit of more. I might put a little bit of color on the buildings, like that warmer color, like this, just to kind of like make it feel like stonework. A little bit of cooler colors here, a little bit of splashing, a little bit of that cool color, a couple speckles of that cool color. Blot lightly. Okay. Let's let this all dry and then we'll start our next 10 through 12. Be right back. And we are still working towards our 50 quick tips, methods, and techniques in watercolor. Let's keep going. We're going to actually do some splashing techniques right now, and this is going to be fun. It's going to go quick. So our next 3 are going to go really quick. Let's take a quick look at what we're going to do here. So I'm going to get some fresh, clean water. Again, I'm emptying my water bucket, putting out some fresh, clean water. Now, so this is kind of, I like to keep my water like crystal clear, like that, crystal clear water. So once I've worked on a few compositions, I empty my bucket, get some fresh, clean water in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 types of splashing. Let's label them, and we'll go back and actually label some of our compositions at the end of the video. We'll kind of recap all of our compositions that we've done here. We're going to do 25, and then we'll have a second video called Part 2. So you'll look for that Part 2, which will be the last second group of these compositions, the second 25. So we're doing 25, and then our second video will be the same. The name of the video is the same. It just will be Part 2 of 2. And this will be Part 1 of 2. So here we're just going to say this is going to be tight splashing. And these are good to label if you're working on at home. I'll peel up this tape a little bit so we have more room. And we'll call this medium splashing, and then heavy splashing. Okay, so now we're going to work on this technique of splashing. Maybe we'll use some different colors, so I'll use a smaller brush, pick up some water, put some water. So the wash, when you're splashing, usually your wash is going to look something like this when you mix it in your palette. It's going to be a little bit watery. It can't be too much just straight paint. It would have to be a touch watery, like that. That's a kind of a grayish color. And then we'll maybe do some blue over here. And then we'll do a little bit of red-orange over here, just so we have a mixture of some nice color variations. Okay, so now the tight splashing, what we're going to do is use a small brush, as you can see here. So we're going to use 3 different brushes. Heavy splashing is going to be our large brush, medium splashing, and tight splashing. So the tight splashing, you can see how much that is very fine. I rinse off my brush, maybe I get some more blue, like that. And then maybe some orange here too. Maybe a little bit of red, some cadmium red. Okay. And maybe some viridian green. You can mix any colors you want. But that's how you can come up with some really, really fine splashing using a very small brush. And this is the number 5 Da Vinci travel brush. And the travel brushes are great. You can just take them apart like this, rinse them off, clean them, rinse them off, put them like this. There's a little hole in the top for the air drying, so it can air dry out. And you can put this in your pocket, your purse, your backpack, your duffel bag, whatever it is. If you're going to go out traveling or getaways, weekend getaways, or just outside. If you're outside where you live and you go around your local area and you might paint a little bit, these are great to have. They're really, and then when you're ready to paint again, you just open it up. And they just screw together like that, and then you have your brush. So, okay, that is the tight splashing. Then we're going to go for the medium splashing. We'll use the same colors. We'll just come in here. And you can see right away, bigger brush, bigger splashes. Larger painting, you'd use your larger brushes for larger splashes. Smaller paintings, compositions, you'd use your smaller brush. Or if you want very small bits of texture and things like that. Okay, then I'll just kind of move over here and get some blue. Maybe some orange. Some red. Okay, that's your medium splashing. Are we having fun or what? This is great. All right, so we're going to keep working, and it's good work. Good work, everyone. I know you're doing a great job back at home, at your studio, at your place. I know you might work at your kitchen table. You might work on a stack tray, on your easy chair. You might be working out in the backyard with a lawn chair, with a sketchbook, having a great time, getting some bags of fresh air. But we are in the studio at this point making a video for you. And let's keep going. Let's keep going here. Heavy splashing, larger brush. We'll start out with the same colors again. We'll get that grayish color. Now you can see, look how, wow, that's aggressive, heavy splashing. You might have to have your tissue handy if you have anything else anywhere else. You have to make sure you blot that up. Okay, and then let's pick up some other colors. Let's get some green and blue. A little bit of red. And there we have it. You can see how the larger brush with water in there, lots of water, lots of paint, you get some really good splashing effects going. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to actually reset up with a new sheet of paper. We're going to keep moving on into our next 6 compositions. I'm hoping you're having fun so far. We're having a great time enjoying ourselves here. We have plenty more to work on. We have actually 50 altogether, all these compositions, 50. The best tips, methods, techniques, tricks in watercolor I know I'm going to give you here, and I'm hoping you're going to enjoy this tremendously. And let's come back. We'll start with another sheet of paper, and again I'll go over the setup of your sheet of paper next one more time quick. So I know some of you, sometimes you start your video, you're watching, something catches your attention, or you have to handle something at your place and you have to go do something, and then when you come back you might have missed something. So I'll interject this setup of our 6 section watercolor paper here. I'll do that one more time in this part 1 of 2. All right, be right back. Okay, so we're going to set up one more time just to reiterate how we set up our paper for our sections here, our 6 sections of our paper. Basically, we divide the paper in half this way, vertically like this. So measuring it out from the top to the middle of the paper here is 5.5 inches. So 5.5 inches is here. And we come over here 5.5 inches down. Like that. Then we just bring our ruler across. Like that. Then we go divide it 3 ways this way. The first third is 4.25 inches. Nine and a quarter, 4.25, 9.25. Same thing over here. 4.25, 9.25. Then we just use the hash marks to line up our ruler. Doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's pretty close, we're going to be doing just good, doing just fine. Okay. Now our next few compositions, methods, techniques, tips, tricks, we're going to do just a little bit of finger painting for the next few. So let's number our sections too. Let's stick with our program here. This will be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, now let's say we want to make a foliage. We want to make it exciting, interesting. We're going to say, all right, sap green. We know that's a great place to start for foliage. Some sap green. We can neutralize that color, mellow it out a little bit, dirty it up with a little bit of burnt sienna. So sap green and burnt sienna gives you a really beautiful neutralized green. You know, kind of grays it down a little bit, not too high intensity with the green, the sap green. Sap green tends to be pretty of a high intensity color by itself. You add a little bit of that burnt sienna, you have a little more of a olivey kind of green that looks really good. And then let's say we want to have some lemony yellow for some more of that brighter looking green. Then we can do that. A little bit of burnt, a little bit of raw umber to this. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to make a quick bit of pencil lines here, like a potted plant. Maybe this is we'll use some of that clay orange kind of look, like this. And then maybe a little bit of burnt umber in there. Make it a little darker over here. Then I rinse off my brush really well, dry off some of the water on a paper towel or a tissue, and then I just kind of slowly damp brush over this way to kind of smooth out that wash. And then we'll just make a quick note on our paper that the light is coming from this direction. So that's our spotlight icon. You could also lift up with a little bit of blotting. I would add a little bit of cool cerulean blue into this. Maybe a little bit of French ultramarine blue here. Okay. Now we're going to talk about just doing a little bit of finger painting with our washes. I splash on a little bit of that green like this. And then we can do some finger painting. A little bit of finger blotting. Pick up a little more sap green, raw umber. Like that. Then we take a little bit of that vibrant, really lemony yellow. A little bit of the blue over here, shadow colors, a little bit of purple. And there we go. You can use some finger tapping and finger painting to make more textures in your paintings. And that's how we would do it if we were just working on maybe a quick bit of composition like this. Now, you could also do the same if you have maybe some architecture. Maybe we have a maybe a quick building facade here, street scene maybe. Maybe we have a building here. We have a door here, a couple of windows. So I'm just doing a very simple street scene, maybe with just a small maybe we add a little sky wash to the top first, splash on a little bit of paint, and just go across like this. That's all you need to do. That's a really quick way of doing a really interesting looking sky wash within 5 seconds. Maybe I need to make it a little bit darker here because it's hard to kind of see with my lights, so I'll just do the same thing again. Splash on a little bit of blue paint, rinse off your brush and leave your brush with the water on it, and then just kind of go across the paper with your brush that has some water left in it. Up at top, it's probably a little darker up in the sky, high up, like that. We could put a little bit of sky wash on the sides over here, like that. Okay, some brown, burnt umber mixed in here. Some pavement kind of a color there. Just a quick rendition of what we're trying to do here. And then what I wanted to do was add some texture to this building. Maybe we're going to make it some raw sienna. We're going to make it like a stone building. And then you finger tap, after you splash on your paint, you finger tap that. You finger tap onto that splashing of the raw sienna. You could even do some sliding like this. And that will give you a really good effect of stone like this. And then once you're completed with that, we'll let that dry. And then we'll add some shadows in the windows. But you can kind of see how you can get some really great effects splashing and finger tapping. Okay, what I'm going to do next is take a quick break, and I'll just do some blow drying. I'll blow dry off this these two compositions. I'm just going to do, dry these off just a little bit. Maybe I'll make a shadow over here. All right, let's let this dry a little more, and we'll come back. We'll put in the windows and the door with some shadows, and we'll be all set. And we'll move right on to number 15. That's going to be we're going to use the hake brush, which I think some of you are familiar with. Some of you, if you're brand new, you might not know about this brush, but it's a great brush. And we're going to kind of show you how you can use that to make some great techniques on your paintings. All right, so let's work in some finishing touches on these windows. We got some really nice stucco type feeling and masonry type feeling on this facade of this building by just doing some quick finger tapping and some, smudging of our paint on this facade of this building. And then we did the same thing over here. We did some finger tapping of paint over here. Give us some good effects of texture. And then here we'll just add some blue, burnt sienna, blue. We'll just do some, shadowing like this under here too as well. Maybe we'll add some purple to that. Some ultramarine violet. A little bit of shadow looks pretty good under there, like so. And maybe angle it this way just a little bit. And while this sets up a little bit, we'll let that kind of set up and dry a little bit, the shadowing underneath the cornice of this building and also the windows and door. Let us start over here with the hake brush. I wanted to mention that this brush is similar to the fan brush, just can cover a little more ground. And this happens to be the Ron Ranson hake brush. You can get that at Cheap Joe's Art Stuff, or you can get it on also Amazon. So what I do is I dip that brush into water, clean water, soak the brush hairs. Then I take the brush and I splay out the brush hairs like this, like that. And then you can always take your brush, set it down for a second, and then you mix up your paint over here. So we'll get some sap green, a little bit of burnt sienna, some cerulean blue over here, maybe a little more alizarin crimson over here. And basically we're just going to showcase the hake brush and how really beautiful this brush can be for doing foreground, weeds, grasses, in a landscape painting, maybe even in a street scene. You might have some foliage you want to put in, some grasses, weeds, things like that. Flower paintings you might be able to use this in. But let's just grab some paint. Get the brush hairs loaded up with lots of paint like this, and then we're just going to show you how you can do some amazing, look at that, how good that it looks. Wow. So just with a few flicks of the brushes like this, I'll put some more burnt sienna. We'll make a dark here, a little more green, maybe some Verdian green. We'll get some Verdian green in here. A couple of darks, and then what I would do is I would just make sure now sometimes you might have to get your hands, you might just want to take a paper towel and just do it like this, kind of get the brush hairs like looking like this, and then do the same thing. But as you can see, you can do really thousands of beautiful grasses and weeds and things in a few brush strokes. Literally 10, 20 seconds, we just created thousands of beautiful weeds and grasses. So you can see how valuable this brush is, the hake brush, in this technique and method. If you're working in a landscape or something like that, especially a large painting, maybe you're using a full sheet of paper, like a 20 by 30 inch composition or painting, and then you can always go in and we'll just do a quick grass. You do some splashing with that too. Okay. We have some shadowing over here. We'll do some more green here. Burnt umber, sap green. Do some darker darks there. Then we might take our needlepoint brush again. Here. Perfect place to use a needlepoint brush to get some really beautiful, so we'll use burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green. Load the brush up, plenty. Hold the brush straight up overhead like this. So you're holding the brush high up like this. On the handle, straight up like this, and then you just basically just flow on some nice larger, taller weeds here to start building out a little bit more of a interesting story with some of the weeds and grasses and things. And there we have it. All right, so what we're going to do is take another break. We'll come back. We're going to start on number 16. And I think 16 we're going to use, actually we can work on 16 right now. We'll use the hake brush again. And we'll use more of a golden color. So this might be more along the shore. Along the shore you might have some okay, this might be near the shore, lots of wind. You can get some great textures and all kinds of interesting forms. And then here I would finish up with maybe the our medium brush here, a little bit of blue. So I'll splash on a little bit of blue here, cerulean blue. Keep the composition warm and cool. Like this, maybe a little lemony yellow. Then maybe we have that sand color. So we have some sand down here. A little bit of purple for some shadow in here. And of course a little bit of shadow in here too. And then some shadows this way. And a little bit of sky wash there. Super quick. Leave a little bit of white paper in there. A little bit of orange, touch of orange toward the bottom of the sky. The sky is always warmer at the base where it meets the surface of the earth. A little bit of water there. A little bit of viridian green. A couple of splashes. Tissue. Blot up if you don't think the splashes were perfect or all right, now let's take a quick break. This looks like it's almost dry, so we can add a little more detail to this composition. So sometimes we're going to work forward and backwards as we go through these compositions. Hope you'll have a fun time doing that also, too. You can kind of see how watercolor, one of the most important things about watercolor is the drying time of when you're working on your sheet of paper and your compositions and your paintings. Sometimes you have to let things dry and then go back in and work on a section of your painting here and there as you go. So it's all a matter of time. Give yourself plenty of time to learn the watercolor medium. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. It takes years and years to get really good at watercolors. There's no question about it, because there's a lot of things that affect your watercolors, especially drying time. If you're outside, outdoors, your painting might be where you put one brush stroke of paint on your paper and it dries instantly because it's so hot out. Other times, if you're working in a cool area, like maybe inside your house, there might be it might be winter time and it's really cool, and you'll work on your painting and everything will take a long time to dry. So that's one of the keys of learning how to paint watercolors. You'll just keep this in the back of your mind. Does this make sense? Keep it in the back of your mind that drying time is really one of the things that gives a lot of people difficulty with watercolor, because, you know, your washes might dry really super quick in one situation, like if you're outdoors painting or if it's really hot. If you have the heat on in your house and it's really hot, let's say in wintertime, that's one situation. All of a sudden your paints are drying really fast and you want to go back and touch up something and it's really hard because it's already dry. Or it could be really, really cool. It could be in the summertime and the air conditioning's on and it's really cool in the house or in your studio, wherever you're working, or outside. Maybe you're outside and it's really cool out in the fall or wintertime, even if you're painting. So all these type of things. Temperature is a really big it influences your or it affects your watercolor painting a lot. The temperature of how warm it is or cool it is wherever you're working, as well as the humidity, but more or less the temperature, and as well as sunlight too. If you have sunlight shining on your paper when you're painting, it literally dries in 5 seconds. You'll put a little wash of paint on your paper, and if you have sunlight shining on your paper, if you're outdoors and it's summertime, you literally will paint a section maybe half the size of this, or not even, maybe 1/4 of the size of this section right here. You'll paint 1/4 of that section and it'll be dry instantly because it's hot out, summertime, and then you have sunshine shining on your paper. So a lot of times watercolor artists will duck under the shade somewhere, someplace where they can paint in the shade so that it cools off the temperature of their paper and their painting as they're working. So just a little tidbit of information as you go, but let's keep working on these. Let's move on to number 17, and we might even backtrack a little bit over here just to touch up a few of these things here, but I think we're pretty good going forward. I just want to touch up a few things on this building here that we created, which is more like a street scene, and I think these are pretty good. We could add a little more detail to this, I think, as well as this, but let's see how it goes. Let's come back, though. We'll take a quick break and start up again. All right, so we're continuing to work on through this painting series here, these series of 6 compositions. Again, we're covering 50, not 10, not 20, not 30, no, not even 40, 50 methods, techniques, tips and tricks in watercolor. Quick compositions here. We're going through a lot of these quickly, so you'll be able to pick up a lot of information fast. You can always come back to the video again, go through it, peruse through it as much as you'd like. I'm hoping you're considering subscribing to my channel down below on the right hand side. So as well as doing these type of videos where I might put a lot of small compositions together, and we do like a sort of like a quick hurry up offense, so to speak, and get a lot of stuff done quickly with compositions and techniques and methods and things like that in watercolor. We're also doing beautiful paintings. We're doing seascapes, landscape, flower paintings. We're doing portrait paintings, figure paintings. We're doing everything that your favorite subject matter in watercolor. We're always covering that week after week, month after month, and year after year on this channel. And that's why I say, please consider subscribing. This way you don't miss a thing. Once you subscribe and you hit that subscribe button, all it does is just YouTube will alert you when our new videos come out. And that's it. That's really all that is. So let's continue on here. We're going to just do a few more details to a few of the compositions as we go here. So I'll go with some sap green and burnt umber here and some burnt sienna, a little bit of French ultramarine blue, so just a little bit of a good dark here, and we'll just make a couple details on this here. So a couple, just a few stems, just like that. Add a few of those in there. Same thing here, maybe a little bit of a darker. Add a little more French ultramarine blue if you want, just to get a couple of darker. Okay, and then maybe we'll use some of that titanium white again. We talked about using titanium white to get some lights into your painting after you've kind of completed your painting and you're thinking you might need to add in a few this here. I might just add in a little bit of shadow under here, under the cornice of the top of this building, like that. There might be some reflected light in this. So the light's bouncing up off the ground and lighting up this underside of the cornice, but yet you have your darker shadow under there. The cast shadow underneath the cornice, like that. And then sure enough, let's use some white. You could take some of that titanium white paint, make a few panes here on the window panes here, like that, for the door, maybe. Also, too, for this window, like that. And what that does is it gives it more of a feeling that it reads correctly. And then maybe we have a little bit of shadow here. A couple of details on the door, maybe. That can really be helpful. Maybe there's a shadow under here for the building. And then again, you can also do a little bit of, a couple of splashes. And then you finger tap on those splashes, and that gives you that really nice kind of stone, stucco, mortar kind of feel to the facade. And then you could also add in a couple more details. You can even use our French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna for your darkest darks that you can make with your palette. So if you're using my palette here, and incidentally, if you ever wanted to, you can just type in Chris Petri palette into YouTube, and you'll find that I have a lot of videos on palettes, probably 10 or 15 videos on all my palettes I use and all the colors that I use. And I'll always kind of really mention that if you want to make your darkest dark color selections, you're always going to go with your burnt sienna, burnt umber, and French ultramarine blue. That gets you your darkest darks. And so here you can make an impactful, really nice looking light. So I'm going to have a light fixture here, like this. And then here we're just going to paint half the light fixture, in essence, because the light is coming from this way across the picture. And again, we always try to put our light insignia, our light icon up here at the right, wherever you want to make your light coming from, the light source. But we can just put our light up there saying the light's coming from this direction, pretty much. And then we can make our light fixture like this at the doorway. And then we could even put a little shadow on there where the light fixture is, so we can take some purple like that and kind of put a light shadow there like that. And there might be a little bit of we might have a little bit of a sill under here, like this. Like that. Maybe we'll make it. So you can get into some details if you want. But that should be fine. Maybe a door handle on here. Take a dark here. Okay, so we're going to keep working over here. The next thing we have 17. This one's fun. This is really taping our horizon lines in our painting. So let's say we're going to do a seascape. We'll take this for example, this next one. We're going to use some artist tape, some drafting tape. And we'll take our tape and we'll pretty much, we'll just kind of decide for ourselves where do we want to have our ocean horizon line. So I'm thinking maybe 1/3 up from the bottom of the painting. That's going to be our horizon line for our ocean. So I'll just take my tape, put it there, 1/3 up from the bottom. Put our tape here, like so. And then we can just start by mixing a really nice green and French ultramarine blue for some distant ocean color. And we'll just go right across the top of the paint, right over the top of the tape. Put some burnt sienna in there too. Make it nice and dark. Like this. That's going to be our ocean. And then as we make our ocean closer to us, we're going to make it more bluer and a little bit lighter. So it's darker out in the deep ocean. And leave some whites in there. Leave some white paper. Like that. Leave some white paper for waves coming in, crashing waves coming in. Like that. And then some more Viridian green. Yeah, wow, isn't that great? Viridian green. It's that beautiful turquoisey green. And you put that closest to the shoreline. Yes. And you're having fun the whole time, right? Good work. Good work. Everyone's doing beautiful work on these because these are fun. You can't go wrong doing these compositions, right? You're just having fun the whole time. There's no pressure. like we're trying to create a great painting or anything like that. We're just practicing the fundamentals of the medium of watercolor, and then maybe we'll just put a touch of sand color here, which is some raw sienna with maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson. That doesn't, that looks fine if you have a little bit of alizarin crimson in your sand color. A couple of splashes of alizarin crimson, like that. And that's our sand for our beach right there. That meets up with the water. And then again, we talked about this is the using tape to create your horizon lines. So now you just look at this and say, look at, wow. You just peel up your tape on a 45-degree angle like this, really slow and carefully. The key to using tape when you're using tape for your watercolors is using either the what they call trim tape. You can get it at the big box stores, like the big Home Depots and Lowe's and stores like that, or your local hardware stores. They carry like tapes that they call like a low tack tape, trim tape they use for trim for the houses. When painters are painting trim in the houses, they use tape that's really very, very easy on, it doesn't tear up anything. So this here, if you use drafting tape or low tack tape, you can tape on your watercolor paper and it peels up real easy like that. You would never want to use duct tape or masking tape. You want to use the really light, they call it frog tape. It's called frog tape. That's a brand of tape that really is very, very low tack. Comes in different colors like green, blue, orange. But you just want to make sure it's low tack, not too much adhesive on it. This way it doesn't tear up your paper. So now that you have your distant horizon line for your ocean there, which looks absolutely beautiful, then all we have to do is add a little bit of cerulean blue for our sky. And again, what better way to make a sky? Let's even go with our large brush here. So let's use our really large number 12 travel brush. I'll rinse. This is very murky. You can see the water right now. Very muddy, murky. Let's empty that out. When you're doing skies especially, always use your fresh, clean water. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll take that blue and some of the Viridian green, splash on a couple of splashes here and there, like that. Rinse off the brush, and then maybe a little bit of this too. And if it goes anywhere else, no problem, blot it up. French ultramarine blue. Start out with a darker sky up this way, like that. Start out dark at the top of the sky. Rinse off your brush, leave lots of water on there, and then just drag it across like this. Watercolor is a medium that really will do a lot of the work for you if you're just really like aware of that kind of idea that watercolor is user friendly. You just add a little bit of water, a couple of dabs of paint like this, a little bit of orange. Rinse off the brush, dry off a little bit of the water, and you just take your brush and go right across the page. A couple of times back and forth. And that's it. Somehow we had some lemon yellow on our paper. That's fine. You could always try, if you want to wet that area and scrub around a little bit on it. And you can see that I was able to lift that up a little bit. that bit of color, and then right across. And then if you have some of your wash backing up into your sky a little bit, you can just take a paper towel, crease it tightly, and then just take it and rest it and press it on the paper. Like that. Ideally, you'd want to let this dry a little more. And also, too, we'll show you in another, let's do it on the next. Once we'll take a quick break, and when we start on this next composition, we're going to show you how you can avoid having your ocean colors back up into your sky and start to infiltrate into your sky washes, because that's a big problem that a lot of, that happened to me all the time when I first started watercolor. I couldn't figure out how am I going to get around the fact that some of my washes keep backing up into other washes and blooming and blossoming and kind of infiltrating into other areas and kind of making a mess of things. On this next one, we're going to show you how you can avoid that, because you can see if you're looking closely at this, you'll see there's a little bit of color from that ocean going back up into the sky, and that's what we wanted to avoid. That's why we even taped this, and that's why we're even kind of calling this like taping our horizon lines with tape, because we want to sort of get a really nice crisp line of the ocean and not have it be affected with a lot of, you know, blurry looking lines. We wanted to have a nice crisp line going across. We accomplished it and it looks good, but we could have, you know, it should have come out a little better. I just didn't think to add that quick little bit of damp line across the top, and we'll do that on the next one. Okay, so we'll be right back. We'll show you how to even avoid that little bit of infiltration of darker wash going up into your sky wash. Okay, we'll do that next. All right, we're moving along here, and we were just kind of talking together here and contemplating this situation where sometimes we'll put down a wash, like let's say this dark ocean horizon line here, beautiful rich dark greens and blues on this horizon line. We taped it off. We got a perfect level line across our painting for our ocean, and the next thing you know, we started painting our sky washes up above, and then as we were meeting up with our ocean, those two sort of blended together, and next thing you know, we had darker ocean colors backing up into our light sky wash. We didn't want that to happen, and the reason it did happen is because we skipped one step. So we're going to show you the next step of how to correct this situation from happening if you do want to get a nice crisp line for your horizon line, whether it's a seascape, landscape, city scene, whatever it is. So let's do the same thing here. Let's we'll come across, we'll keep the line the same here as we had here, so we'll keep that simple. We'll take our drafting tape, we'll go across one more time with our tape. We'll do the same kind of idea. We'll tape above the line so that we can paint the bottom part of the painting. So we put the tape up top and we paint the bottom here, this area, just like we did the ocean. And again, we're talking about using drafting tape, very, very low tack tape. You wouldn't want to use masking tape. You wouldn't want to use duct tape. Scotch tape might work. If you have some Scotch tape, the really nice magic tape. Magic tape, when you use Scotch tape like this, it's called magic tape. It's really, really light tack. So you could put it down and lift it up and it's not going to tear the paper at all. So you could use that too as well if you want to in your paintings and in your compositions. That works fine. So again, we're kind of just thinking about, let's do a landscape. Let's make it a horizon line like so. Let's make it some purple, distant purple and green colors here for the across here, like this, like that. A little bit of more ultramarine violet. Get some of that violet color in there. Looks good. All right. And then as we come forward here, we'll start to make that color a little greener, like that, as we come across here. And then as we get closer to the foreground, we're going to have our lighter, brighter colors like this, like that. And maybe we add a couple splashes of some warmer color even yet, some reds. All right, so this is the beginning of our landscape colors. And now, like we said before, we wanted to separate, and simple enough, lifting up this tape carefully, nice and slow. Then we have it. We have our distant horizon line, nice and straight, perfect, the way we wanted it. And then maybe next we're going to create some maybe we'll have some bluish trees here. Maybe we'll have this one a little darker. We'll make a little bit of a darker green. We'll have some green, a little bit of cobalt blue, sap green, viridian green, a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, so this tree might be a little bit darker, like this. We're doing some tree shapes, some circular, like this. Maybe a little bit of purple for some shadowing over here. Maybe the light's coming from this direction. So we'll put some shadowing over here. Same over here, maybe a little bit of shadowing. Just to kind of set that pace of having some shadow in there. Okay. And this one might come down into the foreground a little bit here. Like that. And now we're going to talk about how we can keep the distant colors from infiltrating that beautiful horizon line we created. So you would take your brush, a smaller brush like this, dry off a little bit of water. So rinse off your brush, you dry off a little bit of water. Does that make sense? So you want a damp brush, not a flooding wet brush. And then you just take your brush and you paint a little bit above that line to make a damp line across just above that line we painted earlier. So you don't want to touch it. You want to stay just above it and leave a little space. And you do the same thing over here. You do a damp brush stroke right above that dark line that we painted across the horizon line, like that. Now what happens is when we paint some sky wash behind here, you're going to notice that it won't infiltrate into that horizon line we just created. Let's try it out. Maybe we'll make some mountains here. Maybe we'll make some cool blue mountains. And you see how that gives us a lot of control there. That water is not, our washes are not flooding down in this lower section here. You'll see that little bit of white paper there. That's where we left that dry paper there. And that's how we do it. So on here, we missed that step. We missed that step of putting a little damp, fresh, clean water, damp water across right above that line there. And now we have established that dry paper right on top of this darker wash here on the bottom once we lifted up the tape. And now you can see how we have a really nice line across there where we're not mixing and mingling the washes together. And then, of course, let's add a little sky wash to it. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll splash on some splashes like this. A little bit of a darker wash up top. take the brush, load it with some water, and just go across and do this a couple times across like that. Tends to work good if you do it really quickly, like splash right away and then go right across. And this way those splashes don't remain on the paper. But that looks pretty good. And we have a nice sky going there. Simple. A little bit of orange down here along the mountains. And sometimes I'll blot up a little bit of paint or water. You can make some clouds too. You take your paper towel or tissue, you do some twists like this. You could put in some clouds. And then if you want, you can get a little more green. And then once this dries, you could add in some branches and limbs and things. We'll do that next. We'll just have to use a little bit of a break. We'll take a quick break for about 5 minutes, and maybe I'll take the blow dryer, do a little bit of blow drying here. And you could do a couple of finger taps too here, just to get a little more texture into your trees in the foreground if you wanted to, like that. So let's do that. Let's take a quick break. I will take a paper towel maybe one time again here, fold it up. Maybe I'll get a little bit of a straight line across here. All I got to do is just press on the paper towel like that, and I get a nice straight line. Okay, so I'm going to bring out the blow dryer and blow dry this off a little bit, and then we can add a few details. Alright, so I'll take some burnt umber, a little bit of that green mixed in with the burnt umber here, a little bit of French ultramarine blue, green, a little bit of cerulean blue maybe. And then maybe I'll take a little bit of paper towel or tissue, just dry off the brush a little bit. I don't want too much paint on there. And I'll just do a few we could just get a couple of branches in here. Just a couple indications of some branches like this. Definitely helps to tell the story of these beautiful trees and this landscape. Maybe another couple of... I would kind of keep these a little more simple. I wouldn't put too many branches or anything over here on this tree in the distance. That one might just probably stay as is. And again, we're kind of doing our compositions here, explaining some of the techniques. So you don't have to worry about You don't have to worry about every bit of detail here. We're not trying to create for this particular painting. We're not really trying to paint a wonderful finished painting. We're trying to do composition and explain some of the techniques that are going on here, and you can kind of see. We'll take some shadowing, maybe some purple shadowing here. This could be some shadowing under the trees. Like that, if the trees are kind of casting a shadow along the landscape here. And the mountains too. Maybe the mountains are casting a shadow. And again, you can lift up a little bit. And a little more shadow over here on this side. And over here too as well. And that should be good. Just again, we were trying to get that feel for taping our horizon line so that it doesn't infiltrate into our mountains or our sky wash. So we've done a good job of that. We haven't let it infiltrate too much. It's kind of nice, crisp, clean line going across. Whereas here we had a little bit of that water, ocean water, infiltrating up into the sky wash. So that's kind of what we wanted to show here for 17 and 18 on our compositions, is using tape to get your horizon lines in your painting, and how you can use the tape to actually really create a really good advantage of separating those lines between nice crisp lines between different changes in the three-dimensional qualities of your paintings as you're going back into the distance into your painting, from foreground to middle ground to the far distance and so forth. So we're going to keep going. We have 18 and we have another 6 to go, and then we're going to break the video down again into 2 parts. So always remember, look for part 2. We'll name this part 1 of 2, and then we'll have another part 2 of 2. So this way we could break the video down into 2 sections. We're already 3/4 of the way through this first video. We have 6 more to go. Let's get busy on those. Just going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, so we are going to finish up our 13 through 18 compositions here. Our 50, we're on our way to 50 quick tips, methods, and techniques in watercolor. And we're going to do a 2 parts on this. So the first 25, let's say, we're going to have part 1 of 2, and then we'll finish up with the last 25, part 2 of 2. So look out for those that next video coming up, part 2 of 2. I thought to myself, let's finish up maybe here. Most artists, and I'm sure you're going to be kind of thinking the same, a lot of times you want to add a little something extra to your paintings when you're working. So that's always the case. We just have to make sure we try to... So I'm going to add a chimney to this small commercial building here. Like that. And then maybe I'll just add a touch of blue for some shadowing. Purple and blue maybe. Purple, blue, brown. maybe a touch of ivory black and brown. And maybe we'll just make a little smoke there like that. Okay. We're always going to want to do a little bit extra here and there. That's totally normal for when you're an artist. You're trying to always bring as much excitement and interest into your paintings. So I figured I'd add just a little something to that storefront here. And let's continue on here. So we're going to move on to the next 6, and that should get us to the halfway point of the 50. And I'm going to set this aside. And then this is kind of a quicker way to, if you make, let's try this. The best thing, if you can, is to create one like template, your first template for your space divisions, for your 6 space divisions. Take that, and then you take your paper and you put it over the top of that, and you can see through it if you hold it up to the light just a tiny bit, like if you hold it up to a lamp or the light or a window, and then you just make little hash marks so you're using your template. And then once you do that, you'll have the hash marks. You'll be able to create those real simply. And then from there, we just take our Sharpie marker. First thing we'll do is we'll set down we'll permanently tape our, and we were saying before, I'm sure all of you're doing a great job here on this video. You're following along, catching on to all the interesting things we're doing here. So we talked about just having our paper always taped down, or our sketchbook, whatever we're working with. We always want it taped down really well to whatever working surface we're on, so this way the paper doesn't shift or move when you're painting or drawing, because that would be a big problem. Especially if you're painting and then your paper moves on you when you're least expecting it or something, and then next thing you know, your brush strokes are painting over an area that you don't want it to happen. So that's why we always say we'll always tape down our working surface. And then we're going to have our ruler here. We'll just put our ruler down and make sure we're going to go right with those hash marks we traced just a second ago, like that. And then halfway on this, there's the 2 hash marks right there and right there. We'll go across like that. And then we're going to just keep the numbering system going. So we left off at 18, so now we're going to have 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. All right, so the next grouping of our compositions here, where we're doing our tips and methods and techniques and tricks in watercolor, so that we have some really good information going forward. So when you're painting, if you're brand new, welcome again. It's great to have you along. If you're brand new to watercolor, you're going to be focusing on these a lot, because these are like some of the real fundamentals of watercolor, where you can learn a lot of basic small thumbnails of things you can practice on an ongoing basis. And then when you go into do a painting, you're going to be recalling back to all of these compositions that you've done. You can even save all of these, number them, save them, and then take them out when you're doing your paintings. If you're going to create a painting, if you're working along with this on our weekly basis, and you can just use those and remember back, oh yeah, I remember I did this, and then we did that. We splashed, then we dragged the brush across and got a nice sky wash really quickly, or we added some tape to make a beautiful horizon line, nice crisp line, or whatever it is. We're just going to keep going here, and all these small items that we learn in these compositions are going to be all parlayed into our future paintings. So the next we have on the list, we're going to use, so really this is going to be fun. We'll use some salt. This is something not everyone uses. I've used this in the past. I'll still use it in the future as I work forward in my paintings. So we're going to use some salt and see the effects we can get with that. So we're going to start out. Maybe what I'll do is I'll start out and I'll label these. So this one's going to be table salt. Table salt. And then we're going to have sea salt. And then the last one we're going to use kosher salt. And each of these salts get thicker and heavier as we go across these compositions. Okay. So the first one we'll do is the table salt. This is regular, good old table salt that you might find in any salt shaker, anywhere you might go, a diner, a restaurant, your house. Everyone has this. We'll use this first. And then let's pretend we're just going to do a wash of maybe a sky wash. So we'll do a simple sky wash. And what I'll do is I'll clean up the palette just a little bit. I like to do that. Not perfectly. We don't have to clean the palette perfectly. Just enough we get the residues of the previous painting or compositions. Like that. Good enough. And then we're going to take some blue, make some sky wash. Let's use cobalt blue. Let's use some French ultramarine blue over here. You can see that's a more high intensity blue. A little darker in tonal value. There's a little bit lighter in tonal value. The cobalt blue, and then maybe some cerulean blue. That'll be our sky washes. And then what we'll do is we'll introduce some raw umber to each of those, just to mellow out those blues a tiny bit. Like that. Okay, then what we're going to do next is we're just going to wet the paper a little bit. So we're going to take our brush here, which is our number 12. So we have a number 12, Da Vinci Pure Kolinsky. The number of this is the 1503 Germany Da Vinci Pure Kolinsky travel brush. And again, these brushes come apart. They're really awesome. You can just take them apart easy. They have a hole in the top, which means you can dry out your brush. So if you put your brush and stow it away like this, put it in your pocket. You can put this in your duffel bag, your backpack, your purse, wherever you have your art supplies. If you're going out, maybe doing some outdoor painting, or say traveling a little bit, going on vacation, visiting relatives, whatever it is, you can just bring this with you. It seals up perfectly, has a little air hole in the top to just let things dry out. And then the next time you need your brush, you just open it up like this. And that's what I really enjoy about these brushes. They're just so convenient. And then again, you can put it anywhere, your pocket. You can, very convenient if you're traveling or doing any kind of plein air painting or anything like that. So let's keep continuing on here. Let's wet this paper just a little bit here. So I'm going to wet the paper, pre-wet the paper, pre-moisten the paper just a little bit. Not the whole thing, just kind of like a square. And I leave some areas of just dry paper. I don't do the whole thing. This way we just have some kind of nice moist paper there to start with. Then let's pick up some colors and we'll let the paint do the work. So I'll just put on some paint like this. French ultramarine blue. Like that. Sky wash. We're thinking sky wash. Some cobalt blue. Like that. And then finally some cerulean blue for the bottom here. And then also let's go with some raw sienna. Maybe a little bit of warm colors at the base of the sky, like this. Now what we're going to do is pretend that it's maybe some snow flurries. So maybe you're going to want to create a painting where you're going to have some snow flurries. A great way to do it, to add some snow flurries without having any much too difficult of a process, you could just take some table salt like this, right on with a salt shaker, and sprinkle some salt on your paper with your wash like this. And then you're just going to let that go and let that dry. So don't do anything. Sprinkle some salt on there and let it just sit like that. And then we're going to do a second one. Let's do the same thing. We're going to do another sky wash. Again, we'll do the same thing. Maybe we'll make this sky a little bit more high intensity. Cobalt blue, French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of raw sienna into each of those. Maybe a little burnt sienna into this. Okay. Then I'll just take my brush and sort of offload that paint into the palette. So I just mixed up all that paint. Let me take that all off the brush. Then I rinse off my brush. Then I go over here and then we're going to do the same process. Let's wet the paper, pre-wet the paper. We'll just make like a square or a rectangle here, just like this. Pre-wet the paper a little bit. Not everywhere, just maybe a square shape. Just like that. And again, we're doing some darker tonal values. And let's get right up in the top here, like this, with our darker. So we're doing a darker sky wash here. Then we'll pick up that cobalt blue. And then some of the cerulean blue down here. And then one last thing, we'll add a little bit of raw sienna again, or yellow ochre. Just a little bit of that at the bottom here. Okay, and then next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go with some sea salt here. It's got that pink color. We'll see how this handles with the paper and the paint. Okay. All right, next thing, maybe we'll make an evening sky wash. So let's make again, we'll wet the paper, pre-wet the paper. Make a rectangle or a square of just damp paper, which you just add some fresh, clean water to your paper first to start with. Okay, and then let's mix up some really dark darks. Let's go with French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, nice dark rich blue, burnt sienna. Let's add some ivory black. And that could be a nighttime sky that we're going to create for our painting. So if you might want to paint a dark night scene. There we have it. Okay. Maybe we go in with a little more black, like this, a little thicker black, and we'll just get the top of the sky a little darker. While we still have time, you have time to add in some paint to your wash, but you can't do it forever. You have to kind of do it quickly. Okay, I'll rinse off my brush. And then we just go with the lighter. The lighter bit of wash down here, so it doesn't have to be as dark. It's darker up top. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply some kosher salt now. So this is the rock. It's almost like rock salt. It's very, you can see that? It's kind of hard to see here, but you'll see when we drop it onto the paper. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of some effect with this. I'm trying to do some rock salt here. Again, very, thick salt. A lot of chefs use this type of salt, the kosher salt, when they're cooking with, a lot of times I see chefs use this when they're making like beef dishes, chicken, kind of meat dishes where they want to have some really good, strong salting of the meats while they're cooking them. putting them into a roast, or maybe barbecuing them on a grill, and they put some of that sea salt in there. And what happens is the salt actually absorbs the watercolor paint and color and water, and it'll give us effect of like some maybe flurries. We'll see how that works. So we're kind of letting this dry. While we let this dry, we'll start working on the next three. So here you can kind of see we are trying to I'm trying to be mindful of time here. I don't want to keep you here forever doing these 50 watercolor tips and techniques, but I want you to have all the information, so I'm going to try to keep going and move on quickly here. Let's see, we did our sea salt, and then we're going to do some graded washes. Now these are kind of, I can expedite these pretty quickly. We're just going to go with a standard, basically to draw a cylinder, we're going to draw a cylinder. So we're going to draw two lines like this, 2 lines to draw a cylinder. And this could be a bottle or a can, and we'll make a little bit of an angle there for the bottom, and a little bit of an angle up top here like so, like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's make this gold and red and blue. Okay, cadmium red, yellow ochre, cerulean blue. We'll use these 3 colors to have some really nice modulation of color. I'll pick up all 3 colors like this, and I want to come over here and just add this to this side of the can. Go back in, get some more straight color like this. I want to go right in and get my shadow underneath like this. Then I want to rinse off my brush with a tissue, dry off some of the water, and then start smoothing out that wash going this way. Carefully, like that. Maybe a little more blue over here. A little bit darker over on this side. Quickly, I go in this quickly over here on this left side. A little bit of the darker darks over here. That. Then I could even just dry this off a little bit with a tissue or a paper towel, blot it up a little bit. Then maybe dry off the brush again, and then just carefully smooth that out. And then you can kind of see that you get a feeling of the light coming around, wrapping around that cylinder. And then we'll put another icon here. We always want to have our icon. That's the light coming from this direction, shining on this cylinder. Over here on the left, there's more shadow, and over here there's more light. And there's the cast shadow from the can, or cylinder, or bottle, or whatever you want this to be. And that's what we consider a graded wash. So we'll call this a graded wash, where we're making the wash darker on one side and lighter on the other, and that produces a feeling of light as well as a feeling of three-dimensional quality. And this can be used over and over again in all of your paintings if you want it to. And depends on the light too as well. If you have a brightly lit painting like sunlight or a bright light, you'll see this type of effect. Sometimes you might paint maybe a cloudy day, or maybe the light is a little different, not that bright. Well, then sometimes you might not see this effect as much, but you'll still see bits of this type of effect. So this is something that, again, though, that you will use a lot of times as an artist, as a watercolor artist, to bring some really nice light into your paintings and shadows and three-dimensional quality. And then we have the more interesting example of this is we did this graded wash, we did the cylinder, so we could just even put underneath this cylinder. And then here we can call this lighthouse. So now we can see how we can translate this exercise or this composition over to a lighthouse. And then we can just maybe create a quick lighthouse, which is going to be the same shape, a cylinder. The only thing is lighthouses tend to taper out a little bit and get wider at the bottom, like this. Okay, so that's, and a lot of times they'll have a small house next to it. That will be the quarters for the lighthouse staff that will manage the lighthouse. And then we can just put the top of the lighthouse up here. Okay, so we can have a lighthouse, just the idea of it. And then we can do some negative shade painting. We can paint around the lighthouse. We'll do this quick. We won't try to prolong this painting. We're just going to try to get some quick wash on here. And then we're going to take this and then use the same washes to create the shadow side of the lighthouse over here, as well as the house along there. And a touch of orange. Over here. Quickly I go back in and just put that orange color into the bottom of the painting here. And then I try to use a damp brush now. Take my damp brush, dry off the little bit of water off the brush, and then try to blend this in like that. Okay, and then we have some blue, maybe some yellow ochre, for a shadow. Maybe we'll have a little bit of darker darks up here. And again, I just try to blend things together so that everything looks like it's working together. Sand color, that's going to be yellow ochre. Maybe some more darker darks here. Darker darks up here. Couple of little bits of detail on the top of the lighthouse. A little bit of the orange or yellow ochre. Okay, so that's the idea of using the graded wash on a lighthouse to give you that really nice feeling of light. Okay, and then the last we're going to do sometimes we have a brush or two that we might have from doing some home improvement projects like this. Let's just try out a little bit of some textures, maybe some weeds and grasses and things like this with a brush that we might find in our basement or in our somewhere along the line in our house. We might have a little shack out back. You might have like a tool shed or something, and you find an old brush that might be like an old paintbrush or something. Let's try to use something like this, see what kind of effects we can get with this. Let's try it out. So we'll take this brush, maybe we'll mix up some paint here. First off, let's make it some nice green and gold, yellow ochre, and some raw umber. And then maybe over here we'll add some blue, French ultramarine blue. Over here some gray colors. Okay, so we have some mixes of colors, some cool colors, some warm colors. We have this nice brush. Let's see what kind of effects we can get with this. Let's just tap our brush into the paint and see what we can do. Look how good that looks. Okay, so I'm continuing on. I'm not sure how far, but we use this brush here. This is like a brush you might have that you find out in the garage or in the basement or in a tool shed, like an old paintbrush. So I just found this and I figured let's try it out. Let's see how it looks. And look how great that looks. Tons of interesting bits of weeds and grasses and one or two little small bits of brush strokes. And then we can just add a few more weeds here like this. Like that. And look at that, how good that looks. And again, we can go back in. We can dry this off a little bit, this brush here. Dry it off. Get a little thicker paint, some green, raw umber, green, raw umber. Get the paint worked into the brush hairs. And look at that, that looks great. A little bit of purple. To mix and mingle with those colors. for the shadow colors underneath here. And then we'll do some more shadowing like this. And that could be some snow. This could be some snow. And we have some shadowing here, like this. All right, so we've got the first half of this video completed. I'm hoping you're going to join us for the second part. Let's remove some of this salt. See how that worked out. Good. Look at that. I'm carefully removing the salt. And that looks good. How about here? And over here? Yes, we got some good texture from the salt. So you'll see that salt can give you some really nice texture to your washes if you want to create snow effects or texture. And then you just, once it's dry, you wipe off that salt and you have some really nice, see that, like some flurries. Okay, we're going to go on to the next video, part 2 of 2, with methods and techniques, tips, tricks, and watercolor. 50. We're doing 50 in all. This is the first 24, and now we're going to move on to the next 25 or 26, and see you on the next video.